Hello and welcome to the third episode of Machine Guns in Your Movies podcast. I'm Sasha.
I'm Joel, and I'm here to discuss films and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of gum.
That's a great opening line for this, yeah.
I said it's technically accurate, not fully accurate. I didn't have actual bubblegum, but I actually am literally out of, I was chewing gum all day and I just spat it out and it was my last one, so it technically applies, so that's why I used it.
Perfect. For today's episode, we choose to discuss a movie which is somewhat connected to the title of our podcast in a way. We talked about the meaning of the title of our podcast, and for today's movie is Wild Strawberries by Ingmar Bergman, 1957 movie. Which was, as far as I know, shot after Seventh Seal. Both came out in 1957, but I think he did it after Seventh Seal. If I'm not, maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, it's both have their own similarities and differences. While Strawberries is more relies on words than Seventh Seal, and but he kind of went. He kind of achieved the balance, but Seventh Seal is more visual, let's put it that way. But Wild Strawberries is basically an introspective drama, existentialist introspective drama, and it's one of the most adored movies of all time, and certainly one of the best movies of the 50s and of all time in general. But it's considered a classic, and it's certainly one of the Bergman's best movies. What's your general opinion on the?
I mean, wow, I forgot that. You're right. They did the Seventh Seal and Wild Strawberries came out. It's even more impressive than when Jim Carrey came out with Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber, and the Mask in 1994, all in the same year. Yes, but right. No, seriously, that is. I'm quite fond of Wild Strawberries. I admit on my latest view, I had very, very fond. It's interesting and quite fitting that just like with last film's Matinee, there's sort of an Inception within Inception thing. This one's more of an issue of an old man. I remember seeing this movie decades ago and being quite taken with it. And I very much enjoyed it, but I'd be remiss if I didn't confess to the fact that I was slightly feeling a bit drowsy when I watched this time. But it's just very much an incredibly well done and captivating film. And I'm glad I got that chance to see it again.
Same. I mean, I saw it some 15, 20 years ago, I think, when I was in high school. And basically, it's been a long time. And I was happy to revisit, and I forgot a lot of things about it. But the Seventh Seal stayed more in my memory. I've seen, I think, Seventh Seal last time around 10 years ago or something, but it stayed more in my memory, perhaps because of the visuals were more striking for me and more iconic. But this is an extremely well done film, obviously. And the story, I guess we should talk about the story, about the plot, and discuss the plot and certain parts of the plot as we go, because I think it's important, because it's basically constructed as constructed. I mean, it's basically a road movie drama, road movie introspective drama, and so there is the way that plot unfolds is quite important, and the discussing the certain events. It's
an interesting thing to discuss this. It's if we're being entirely blunt, with some of the other movies we've discussed, and even the ones you just mentioned, like Seventh Seal, it's like there's usually some amazing or very captivating movies, like that iconic scene of the Grim Reaper playing chess with the Crusader, but and the last scene, if I'm not mistaken, there's a scene of Dance Macabre. Mm-hmm. But in this one, bluntly, very honestly, with the exception of the very opening dream with where Professor Isaac is wandering through the streets, and he ends up meeting in a dream sequence where he encounters a coffin where a copy of himself comes out and grabs him by the hand in a sort of a like downplayed but surprisingly very eerie and captivating moment. Wild Strawberries doesn't really have much in the books department, the visuals department. That is to say, it relies more on its dialogue and the mise en scène. It does still have some good looks and some great visuals, but yeah, it's very dialogue heavy, and it relies much more on its characters to enchant the audience, to captivate its audiences.
Yeah, I mean, he used more. I have to rewatch Seventh Seal, but as far as I can compare, I mean, he certainly used more close-ups and more for this film, and the dialogue between and the monologues too. I mean, the dialogues and monologues are very important for this film, and the words. It's a very verbal movie generally, but it doesn't hurt. We can still see the Bergman's theater origins here. He still has that, but at the same time, the movie is not theatrical you don't feel that in a bad way. But certainly he uses words a lot. And there's like declarations and things like that, but they don't feel preachy in this one. So I mean, it's a sign of good direction, I guess, and good good acting, obviously. I mean, okay, the movie concerns the Professor Isaac Borg or Bori would be more closer how the Swedes say, as far as I know.
I was going to ask Swedish too. This is a bit of an interruption, if you don't mind, but how much Swedish did you know, or something like that? Could you understand the film very well, or were you really relying on
some of the stuff, some of the basic greetings and conversations, and some of the more like familiar discussions around the lunch or things like that, but not much more than that. I know it a little bit, but not much. Yeah.
Yes,
I'm just trying to catch some of the.
Colleague has spent time in Sweden, and he has studied the language to a degree. And but yes, I just thought I'd share that with our audience.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I some of the stuff, but not much really. Obviously, need to study it more. The professor is played by Victor Sjöström, the famous Swedish, and then later he immigrated to the United States. Director and actor. He's basically the central character of this film. And I'll mention later his one film of his directorial career, which is important for this film. But for now, let's move with the plot. At the beginning of the film, we see him arguing with a housekeeper, his housekeeper for a long time, for 40 years, Agda, played by Jullan Kindahl, and he suddenly decided to change plans for his 15th anniversary. For he is about to be given an award for the 15th anniversary of his doctorate for his service, and he decided not to go with the plane but to go with the car, and they start arguing about that, and then we start seeing basically some of while they're arguing, we start seeing some of his some of his traits, some parts of his personality in a way. He's self-obsessed, a little bit not a little bit. Later we will find out more, but he is egoistical and self-obsessed, and he's arguing about the little things and things like that, and that's how the movie starts basically. And he decides to go with a car, and is joined by his daughter-in-law Marianne, played by Ingrid Thulin, and she's visiting him. We'll later find out why, and she's staying for some time with him, and she wants to come to go with him to meet with her husband Evald, the professor's son, Evald Borg, who is played by Gunnar Björnstrand, and he's basically later we'll find out the similarities between the personalities of the father and the son, but the marriage of his son and his daughter-in-law is not in a good shape, and so they start going with a car, and then they pick up the three hitchhikers, Sarah, Anders, and Victor. Sarah is played by Bibi Andersson. She plays two parts. She plays a part of the Sarah and of the girl with the same name of hitchhiker and of professor's love from his youth, basically.
His cousin, if I'm not mistaken.
Sorry?
His cousin, if I'm not mistaken.
Cousin. And he's, basically they're hopefully distant cousin, yeah. During that, very soon, as they started the trip, we see him stopping by his to see the place of his old house where he daydreams and the dreams basically of his old family and of Sarah picking wild strawberries for birthday of their grandfather, as far as I remember.
Hearing that is somewhat humorous. It's not that funny, but it is mildly humorous and charming the way he has such a hard time understanding and the dynamics of the whole family at the table. It's when I was watching that scene, it made me think about, like, that's a wonderful thing about foreign movies. You can discover something that's both familiar and exotic at the same time. Discovering how Swedish people have historically, imagine that maybe times have changed, but like the way Swedish people, at least this family, their dynamics and things of that nature, and how it might compare to it, because I have had similar experiences to the one depicted in that one. But yes, it's a very great scene.
Basically, I guess he would repeat something similar later in Fanny and Alexander, basically, when he would describe. I guess some of that is a lot of that. I guess is inspired by his own family. Although in Fanny Alexander there is that element of the father, of the dominating father, and which here also we see, but in a different way. We basically see him daydreaming of Sarah from his youth, picking wild strawberries, and then we have a transition to the hitchhiker Sarah, played by the same actress, and then they pick up the three hitchhikers, which basically we see the people we see are mirrors of the people from the past in a way, because the hitchhiker Sarah is like in a way in love with both male hitchhikers, and we also find out that in his youth, Sarah from his youth married his brother, so that there was also that element, and later they crash with the married couple, Almans, who are with their car, and they pick them up, but they start the couple start arguing so much that they basically the Marianne throw them out, because they are such. It's obvious that they have such a hard and poisonous, in a way, relationship that they didn't want to continue with them, and later we would find out that they're in a way all.
Sorry? Virginia Woolf. It's just like if Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor from Virginia, who's created Virginia Woolf, just decided to do hitchhiking in a different film or something. It's really bad, the relationship. So
yeah. Good connection. Yeah, I haven't thought of that. And basically, and then we see then their travel continues, and he stops to see his old mother, who is a very cold person in a way, and she's still very active. He visits her from time to time, but you can see the detachment from the rest of the family. Nobody else visits her, and you can see that the relationships inside of the professor's family are very detached and cold, and Marianne is kind of an exception when it comes to that, because she seems different personality when we compared to the rest. So we also see, as a gas station worker, we see Max von Sydow in one of the parts, in a small part here. That year he would have a much bigger part in Seven Seal. Later they continue, and as they continue, professors continues to there are several scenes of the dreams. And there was a first dream. You mentioned first dream. Do you want to talk about that scene, the first? Because I think the scenes of the dreams are important for the film and their symbolism, their meaning.
Yes, I'd discuss it for a moment, but I'll let you take over in a second. But I think it's an odd convention that Bergman decided to go with at the very beginning when he reaches the aforementioned, the titular Wild Strawberry. It's actually, from what I've been told, it's the title of the film is more like Wild Strawberry Patch. It means a place like that, and it's supposed to invoke a area or a place from one's probably from one's youth, where you feel a bit of nostalgia. I think we all have something like that, a place where you spent a lot of time as kids, and it means something special for us, and that's kind of what Bergman's going for. But it's an interesting convention that he initially he just it's nothing but flashbacks when he first arrives there, but then he starts having dreams of the relationships he had, and like analyzes the good and the bad with growing up with his family, and things of that nature, romances with his cousin, and it was an interesting. I thought it was interesting, but do you have any observations you'd like to make?
I was thinking more about the scene of the first dream. I think the scene of obviously the film is an existential drama. He's wrestling with his own with his own death, with the sense of his own mortality and his own death, which is coming closer and closer, basically. And the first scene is clearly showing that. There is the first scene is shot very much in a expressionist way. There's a strong there's a contrast between shadows and light, and there's I would say that he consciously it is almost shot as a horror scene, and I would say that Bergman was pretty much conscious of that. And later he would make a full-blown horror film, Hour of the Wolf. And here, in the first scene with the carriage, he was inspired by the film which was directed by the main actor of Wild Strawberries, Victor Sjöström. He did, I think it was 1922. I saw the film a long time ago, and I don't remember much. I remember it being pretty long and preachy, and I expected more horror, but I got more like preachy drama than I got horror. But there is that he was in that first dream scene with the carriage, and professor seeing his double as a dead man. He's seeing himself in a coffin, basically, not his double, but himself in a coffin as a dead person. That's basically pretty much inspired by Phantom Carriage, the 1922 film directed by the main actor of Wild Strawberries. And that film is about a guy who is abuses alcohol, whose alcohol abuse destroys his family and the his marriage and everyone else around him, basically. And as far as I remember, he gets hit at one point at the beginning of the film. He gets hit by the bottle on his head, and he gets into a comatose state, and he got picked up by Death, or by Death, who is basically his friend who died recently, and he's driving the carriage of Death, and he's talking basically with him, making him remember his past mistakes. And then we see basically again the flashbacks. The structure of Phantom Carriage and the Wild Strawberries is pretty similar in that way, and he's facing his own mistakes, and in the end comes to consciousness of the film and tries to fix his past mistakes, basically, and succeeds mostly, as far as I remember. For some of that, but some of the damage is done, and so it's a pretty interesting film, and it was obviously a big inspiration on Bergman. And here we have a scene which is directly inspired by it, and the whole film, the structure of Wild Strawberries is very similar to that one. There is that the drive and the introspection and the flashbacks to the previous years, and the professor, coming to terms with his own mistakes, with his own egoism, with his own self-obsessed personality, and the coldness towards his wife. There is a second dream, very important, also, a second or third actually dream. The second would be when he was dreaming about his family, but the third one was when he found himself in a exam room, basically, like he's having an exam of life in a way, and basically, the guy who is holding examination is the played by the same actor who plays Alman. And he's asking him stuff, which is, there's a lot of dream logic there, like lots of the stuff that when he sees through the microscope, he sees his own eyes and things like that. There's a lot of the stuff which is not logical in traditional terms, but is filtered through the dream logic. And then he asked him the question, what's the doctor's first, what's written on the blackboard? He cannot read what's written on the blackboard, and he says, what's written on the blackboard is doctor's first duty. And he asked him, what's the doctor's first duty? And professor cannot remember that, and he said to him, the doctor's first duty is to ask for forgiveness. And then says to him, you're guilty of guilt. And which is obviously, then we see that it's his own professor's own consciousness, and him, digging through his past and coming to terms with his mistakes. And then he brings him the Alman, or the character of the examiner, brings him again. It's these scenes are shot again very with a very stark contrast between shadows and light, and there's lots of expressionist elements. He brings him to the place where we witness that we see his professor's wife, who is dead for a long time. We see her with other guy, with basically like cheating, and we see basically in a way the reason she's escaping from the cold, loveless marriage in a way. And then he's again thinking, and he wakes up, and at that point they arrived to the destination for the award ceremony. Did you want to say something about?
I thought it was like there is I suppose this is a minor spoiler. At this point we'll probably discuss some of the more sensitive issues of the film, but I think one of the film's
spoil the ending, yeah. That's
this point was a conversation between Marianne and her husband Evald, and where she declares that she's pregnant and expecting a child, And Evol's reaction, I think it builds on it's one of the rare things that I take issue. Otherwise, it's a very exceptionally well done drama. But the issue I had was that I don't know. It's a critique that I've had of the Lars von Trier's films, especially Nymphomaniac. Just this conversation seems extremely artificial and fake. Evel just seems like a stock character saying, "I'm bitter with life and I cannot stand it," and things of that nature. And it all, I don't know, it just came forced and like not sincere as a real moment. I do get the drama between the two, and some people really do think the way Emil does. I just think it's not well expressed, but like he just says how he has bitterness about the world, and it's supposed to build on the idea that Isaac is causing his misery to spread downwards. He does have it starts off with a somewhat strained relationship with Marianne at the beginning when they get together, but they soon start to bond. Over the film, they start to bond, and I think that is kind of an interesting aspect about this film is that Bergman has a tendency for being very deep, pensive, and sometimes depressive or difficult films to watch, but this one's just so lovingly. It's fairly cheerful and optimistic by his standards in any event. Same thing with Fanny and Alexander. It's a bit more. I felt it was a bit more lighthearted, but yeah, this one's very. There's a lot more of a positive outcome at the very end, and I think it's just a very well done film in that regard. But yeah, no, but that is sort of something of a lower point for me. Is, the conversation, the dynamic, the dynamic's good. It's just that I don't think that the scene with those two in the car discussing his issues and the way he expresses himself, I don't know, it doesn't really work for me, but what are your thoughts on it?
I can understand that it worked a little better for me, although yeah, I could feel a little bit of that too, so I don't know, it's half. I would say that generally it worked for me, but it's that scene is a little more theatrical, I would say, than the rest of the film. I maybe it goes a little more to that
tone, I'd say.
Sorry?
I don't think it matches the rest of the film tone, but that's just me.
A little bit, yeah. Although it kind of worked a little better for me, but I can understand, yeah, definitely that. There is basically here we see again the parallel between the characters of the father and the son, and we see that the son, the Eval's character is pretty much shaped, obviously, by the behavior of his father. And then he says that he's an unwanted child in a unwanted or cold marriage. I forgot the words basically, but yeah, and that's something that it's basically that element of the passing the traits and the damaging the future generations in a way. But by that point, as you said, yeah, the professor starts to Isaac starts to not starts to, but I mean he's pretty much bonding with Marianne, and he's more open to her, and she's more open to him, and he himself starts to change, and he's there's that element. I mean, that's in his dream, a doctor's first duty is to ask forgiveness, and you're guilty of guilt. He's digging, and he's starting to change, and then we arrive to the destination, and we see the ceremony itself, which is directed as intentionally, not because of the nature of the ceremony, but I think that Bergman directed it intentionally as a very formal, it's choreographed very precisely, and it's very cold in its essence. Not just that, I guess it will be much different in the reality, but it's basically it was very cold, very formal, and the professor does not get really anything from it. He's thinking about other things. He's thinking about his like the people with whom he traveled, and he's not really thinking about that moment. It did not bring him happiness that he thought that it would. And Evald and Marianne is having we pretty much realize that they're either going to separate or or they're gonna continue. They're at that crucial point of their marriage, and they decide to go to a dinner, and the professor, the hitchhikers say goodbye to the professor. They from outside of the window, and he says, "Come visit me sometimes," when they don't hear him. And before that, he says to Agda, he says that they should probably maybe it would be good that they stop calling each other by their titles and their second names. And she's not she doesn't want that, but she's very confused by his change of the behavior in a way. And she's very confused when he says to her, "I'm sorry for the arguing with you earlier in the morning." And we see that he is changing. That's the crucial, basically, moment of the film.
And then there's the ending, which is just it's just a really touching scene. It's just Isaac going to bed, and I don't know. It's basically it caps off the beginning. He was haunted by nightmares, but now he faces his sleep with seemingly a far more positive and pleasant attitude about it.
Yeah. The last dream is positive, and here we come again to that element of the place of security, the wild strawberries, that symbolical place, and he's again dreaming of his childhood. And the film ends on a positive note, as you said, and he's basically, because he learned to say, "I'm sorry for my," at least try to fix some of his to come to terms, and at least to try to fix some of his past mistakes, and changed some of his emotions and his approach and to other people, his behavior, and he's coming to terms more easily with his mortality, which is basically the main theme of the film. And the film ends on a close-up of his face being much more peaceful than during the earlier dream sequences and nightmarish sequences, actually. Yeah, so basically, that's a much more, I would say, a much more positive film than Seventh Seal when it comes to the conclusion itself. Although the Seventh Seal also have that element of the future generations are gonna change some of the things with the troupe of the actors, but it's more it's a film with a more positive tone than Seventh Seal, definitely. And there's that element also. I wanted to but did you want to say something else, maybe about the ending, about overall themes of the film?
Yeah, much. It's that's about you really the synopsis was quite thorough. And, you've gotten pretty much most of the things I wanted to hit out of the ballpark. I think I would say there's something of a funny thematic irony in that he both indulges in nostalgia, but then seems to realize that his life was not as rosy or as excellent as he has been once thought of. And ultimately, again, further irony, he discovered it turns out that his best days might be ahead of him, might still be lay ahead of him. So
that's something that exactly. Yeah, that's right. That would be that's right. There's two more things I wanted to mention. Just there's two more thematic elements I wanted to mention. There's that element of the change of generations and the change of behaviors of generations. We see that, like for example, his mother, when he speaks to Marianne, she says, "Why are you not at home with the husband? I mean, where are you with? I had 10." And she says to her that they don't have kids, but I mean, we don't find out at that moment yet that she is pregnant. But and then the professor's mother says, "I had 10 kids, and you should be at home," and things like that. There's that element of the change of generations and how the old generations behaved, how the old generations behaved towards women, and how the new generations behaved. That element of more freedom and more acceptability, and which is pretty much
between Isaac and Marianne. he makes comments about it. What is it about women? I'm not 100% certain, but I do remember him making comments about women who should be like. He has a more old-fashioned view on what more suitable roles for women and things of that nature. And they're reaffirmed in his mother, but they're clearly not felt by younger Swedish society. As we demonstrate with the younger Sarah and her two bows that she pines for. So. Yeah, it's just another interesting contrast in the film.
It is, yeah, it is that element of basic, and there's that element of Bergman talking and wrestling with the question of not just with the question of death, but with the question of what comes after that, or with the question of God. Is there a God? Is there no? I mean, he's during that time he was pretty during the whole of his filmography. Basically, he was wrestling with that. He was going pretty much. There's that feeling, especially in his later film. Here he's still on the verge. Basically, he's not. He's wrestling with the idea itself, and there is that element of the two hitchhikers, Anders and Victor, fighting, literally physically fighting when arguing if there is God or not. One of them wants to become a priest. Also, that's another thing, and one is a scientist. So there's that symbolic element, two different symbolic personalities. And they ask Professor what he thinks, and he pretty much recites a poem which can be interpreted, and all of them recites part of that poem, which can be interpreted as an ode to the God, but it also can be interpreted as an ode to the fellow human beings. So it still verges on it's still not answered. And in his later films, Bergman would go in like a Silence and Winter Light and Through the Glass Darkly. He would go more into that territory that there probably is God, but if he is present, he's still pretty much silent, and he's not answering anything, our prayers or anything like that. And here, and that started kind of in a way with the Seventh Seal, that cycle of films. But yeah, he's starting to he's wrestling with that here, and that's also one of the more important elements. But it seems that he's more concerned with in this film with what comes, of course, with the life itself and the life that people had, and not with the afterlife. And that's the film, as we said, ends with an optimistic note. And as you said, it's probably maybe the professor's best days are in the future. Yeah.
So yeah, I got to watch it again. It's I really like the idea of comparing. Interesting that I decided to compare. I like it came with the title of the podcast, obviously, but I'm glad I choose to would do something that both would give me an chance to see something by Ingmar Bergman and something by Charles Bronson. And on that note, that's going to be our next podcast. We'll be discussing Death Wish 3, and I definitely have quite a bit, although they're incredibly dead, although they're very, 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 very different films. There's quite a bit to enjoy in that film too. So I look forward to discussing that.
Me too, definitely. Thank you for listening this episode, and expect a new episode in 2 weeks. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.